But yeah, what's up, everybody? This is Conversations with Coomer, episode 11. Today, we're here with Colin Skinner, a man I look after and look to as a role model and has inspired me. And, ideally, the point here is that he does the same for you guys. Colin is also kind of a native Ohioan, you consider? Yeah, native Ohioan,
Yeah.
with a little bit of travel. And actually different than the other guests that we had. Colin, we just had Will on the previous episode, who Will does have a family as well, but Colin is, like I said, a role model for me, for someone that I look to when it comes to the family dynamic and living as a vital father, things like being in shape and minding health in our world and more. So really, thank you, Colin, for doing this, and I appreciate our relationship. And really, just to start off, feel free. I would love to hear kind of your story, whatever you feel called to share the most, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. That was quite the introduction, and you're an inspiration to me. Really value our friendship and the things we talk through and family and life in Ohio. So it's really special to get to be here on the property in Ohio here with you. Yeah, man. Family's from Central Ohio, and my parents were high school sweethearts and had me out of the state. So they kind of got out, went to college, and had me in the South. Moved to the West Coast and got the taste of the tropical lifestyle in Southern California, and then we settled in the deep South, like Memphis, Tennessee. So there was a lot of assimilation there for me and a lot of different cultures. And I mean, talk about culture shock of a lifetime, going from Southern California values to deep Mid-South values, which is a fantastic place to raise a family. But there was no real skateboarding or, ocean trips on the weekends, and I had to find my groove. And like any kid, for me it was sports and friends. Really enjoy being outside all the time. That was my thing. So that led me to college, East Tennessee, mountains, new scenery, and really started to enjoy getting out, traveling within the United States. I still haven't really jet setted much yet, and came to Columbus, Ohio in 2017 during what I kind of call my dark night of the soul, and just mid-20s, thinking I would be at the top of my game, and was in the entrepreneurial world, had just started doing some real estate, and man, a bout of, gut dysfunction and brain fog and memory. I had memory loss going on. It was a lot at the time, looking back especially. It was a lot. Didn't have a lot of language for it back then. So moved my life to Ohio, moved in with my grandparents actually, and just started over here. And the coolest thing was I found my resolve to heal, had this incredible passion for what I was going through at the same time. Like, if I can do this, I know others can. And by the grace of God, was able to heal naturally with some guidance, and met my wife and started a family. And so we're here in Central Ohio today, and we're enjoying life, man.
Beautiful, beautiful. And yeah, I'd love to dive in, because I guess I didn't know chronologically how that went, starting with fixing yourself,
Yeah.
and everything. So if you give a basically synopsis of what you're going through, and now you have the language, obviously, and more or less how you found the knowledge and what you did to fix it, and what you do even now too.
Yep. Yeah, what I didn't realize back then was that, as Joseph Campbell talks about in The Hero's Journey, people have paths. When you see other people's paths that you may admire, that's not your path. And I was living many other people's paths for me. Now that I look back, I'm a people person. I love people. I was in, college ministry. I love serving, and I was almost like, in many ways, a yes man to default. And I was on my journey as a man with a lot of boyish energy. And so getting into the business world, I was too spread thin. And so what I think a lot of people don't realize is that these symptoms, which are just signals, say it's autoimmunity or gut dysfunction, it's really just our lives telling us something's off. It's not really a bad thing, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me at the time. I needed to optimize some things and make some changes, whether it was the things I was eating or clothing I was wearing. I had no concept of like chemicals back then. I was just living that kind of normal lifestyle that any bachelor lives. It's a natural progression, right? And thankful for my wife. She's taught me a lot about that too. So it was just a growing up moment for me. And so at the time, I experienced like leaky gut, which was allowing like food and things into my bloodstream. It was going to my brain. I had a yeast overgrowth called Candida, which was showing up in my skin. I was having like inflammation and weight gain. So back then I just thought like maybe I need to eat better, you know, or like change how many calories I was bringing in. And I had done a boxing tournament in college and lost like 40 pounds in 2 weeks. And I was at like enamored with like how that was possible. How could the body lose that much weight? I think it was, I lost 40 pounds like in a month, and then I gained it back in 2 weeks. That's what it was. So that like, I like was like turned on by that. Like in a really weird way, I was like, how did that happen? Like, this is crazy. Of course I was like pudgy and, you know, but I'd always been around like 160, very stable, kind of normal middle weight for, you know, guy that's like 5'11". So here I am in my mid 20s, and like, it was all going downhill. So I was having a hard time with my mood swings and paying attention at work, and it was bad. I was taking naps in the afternoons. I was also, at one point in that season, working a desk job. And that, again, for me was just no bueno. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I had gone to college. I got my degree. And I thought on paper, this is all adding up. And during this time period, I started watching like boxing matches at my desk. I'd be done with my work, like, and I'm like, why am I still sitting here? This whole 9 to 5 thing, like, in some cases it makes sense, but like, there's no reason for me to be here. I should go home, work out, get my laundry done, and I'll be a better worker tomorrow for it. But I have to sit at my desk till 5. Like, I didn't understand what was happening. So I started watching boxing matches. I started getting into regenerative agriculture. I can't tell you why. It just was like where my heart was, and I was becoming on fire for these unconventional approaches to life. And so at one point, I told all my best friends, I am quitting my job and I'm moving to Kentucky because I found a farm that teaches regenerative ag and how to farm according to the times and the seasons. Some of it you could say biblical, a lot of it also like astrological, like with the moon phases, which I had no knowledge of. I was like, I have to learn. And they're like, well, what's the pay? And I'm like, well, there's no pay. You just, you know, they feed you and stuff. And they're like, you can't do that. You know, like you gotta make a plan. And so there was all this energy all of a sudden, and this was also the time where I started to get low energy in terms of like my physicality and my mental state, but I was getting these like intense bouts of like fire for like regenerative ag and like manly endeavors, like boxing and marathons and all this physical stuff. So it was like honing in this fire, basically, right? I caught the fire. It was just a sense of honing it. So that did, though, like, that same time period was when like I was experiencing these just like terrible energetic crashes. So yeah, it ended up being like leaky gut and all these like Hashimoto's, thyroiditis was another thing, thyroid problems. So yeah, that was rough, but I was able to thankfully hone it and get on the right path, which then led me to Columbus, Ohio. So sweet. And just to kind of wrap all that out, what was the process like learning? Was that, I guess, through Brianna, part of it is learning how to heal Hashimoto's, or did you, how did you, I guess, educate yourself? Totally,
for someone who doesn't know or might not even
right
understand these things.
Right, and forgive me because I'm going through, of course, 6, 7, 8 years of happenings.
You're fine.
But in that, I started looking into it myself. Like I felt like I needed to take the responsibility to start like figuring this out. I was seeing some conventional doctors. I wasn't seeing any results from them. Wasn't necessarily on medications per se, but they were certainly saying you probably have some thyroid issues, but no one could like pinpoint it. No one ever took any blood panels. There was some mentionings of medication, but I knew I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to do it the natural way. And then when I moved to Columbus in 2017, I'll never forget, on our first date, we went to like a local burger joint, and they had like, you know, grass-fed burgers, whatever. And I was kind of in that phase of like, everything needs to be organic and kind of a more of a restrictive diet. But it was, again, on that path to overall like abundance and sovereignty. And when it comes to like health and decisions and responsibility, like insourcing my wisdom for my own health. And it's so funny because the server came out, took our orders, and like another one brought our food, and like I had got like the salad with like, you know, the little bit of protein, and she got the burger. And so they like swapped our orders because they're like, oh, you know, the salad for the lady. I'm like, oh, that's mine actually. You know, I'm like gluten-free everything. And So we're sitting there and we're talking about like why we ordered what we did. This is like our first date. And she ends up saying, oh, I'm gluten-free too. You know, I'm dairy-free, all this stuff. Like we were both kind of restrictive at the time, but we got each other and we had the same foundation of wanting to cultivate our health for longevity and to raise a family one day. And so very quickly, I was like very attracted to her from like a health standpoint, which sounds almost nerdy, but at the same time, it makes sense because we had so many like commonalities.
It fit the vision, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The vision was there. I don't know if I had consciously set my vision yet at that time, which we have now that we're married. We've done it together. But that set a really nice foundation for how we were going to one day, you know, as we were talking through family and stuff, dating, you know, raising our kids, being closer to the land, traveling, and ultimately serving humanity with the things we've learned. Because up to now, I mean, I've been over a decade of in like this holistic health world and not just healing my own body, but then as I was healing, how can I heal family members? You know, my wife Brianna, who we're talking about, like she was able to overcome her dairy like allergy, and that was through incorporating things like local Ohio raw milk, and we learned what lactase is versus lactose, and you know how animals are treated and what they're fed, and so you know so many rabbit holes there, but we just did have this vision for like health and success and how like health really is wealth, because we were already in the real estate world and we knew how to create wealth there. But we were like, wow, we see all these older people like crumbling around us and we don't want to be that. Like we want to go, you know, the long, deep route with our family, however many kids we have. You know, she said in our vows she wants to field a baseball team with our children. So we're still working on that because that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, I don't even know what number that. I know that's like at least 7, right?
Yeah,
or more.
Like a what? 11,
like 10.
I think. Yeah, 10,
I
11,
probably sound un-American right now, but I quit. Baseball was boring for me. Anyways, that's awesome. That's awesome, and funny too. And then like actually let's keep going with that in terms of, because like I said, that's something I really look to you for. How has that process been, or how really did you go about doing that? Because to me, it seems a lot of the family side of things and in relationship as well with Brianna has been exceptionally intentional.
Yeah.
How did you go about like connecting that vision and then bringing that into reality as you've done over time with, you know, where you live, your way of life, and raising children and more? How did that really? What did that process look like?
It's been a process. That's a good word. It's been an unraveling, a lot of unlearning together, and that's been the most beautiful part to me, is like what a beautiful balance a relationship can be, you know. And when you see everything that your partner or significant other or spouse could be, and you want to call all those things like out of them and help chisel, you know, it's not like you don't do it yourself, but there's this dance, I think, and there's love, sometimes more intentional and sometimes more like maybe like they're in a season and kind of like needs some space. So I've had to like navigate that as a like what I call a frame holder for my family, where she's really helped me up level in so many different areas, including health, you know, including how I speak to my sons even, and you know, navigating familial traumas and generational traumas that we both have said, you know, it ends with us. And I will say, it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to truly mean it and act it out and visualize that, write it down if you have to, and live it out, because, you know, it gets gritty and it gets messy, and the, you know, I don't know, 2 a.m. tantrums or whatever the situation may be, and you're tired and you're figuring this thing out with your spouse. But as far as, you know, life goes and setting up a life by design, that's been, I think, the most rewarding work. And, you know, here we are like on a family plot of land. We're definitely not like where we want to be ultimately, but that's why, like you said, such a beautiful word is it's a process. So we've had seasons and even like years. We've been married for 5 years now. We've been together for, I think, 7. And it's amazing how our dreams have changed even in those times. So having the grace for one another to listen and, you know, intently, especially when the other needs to be heard, and not being afraid to erase like past dreams, because I feel like every time we've made a new dream, it's been built on the foundation of another one that we've burnt down, like in a beautiful way, almost like a phoenix that rises from the ashes. And every time we do that, I feel like we up level as a family. And I've learned so much too about the kids and how energetically they match where we are at and how my wife and I are in our relationship. And it's such a cool thing to witness as parents that, you know, a lot of times when I want to like really come down on my child, or if they're going through something and I'm like, dude, like what is their problem? My wife is so gentle and yet like stern at the same time and reminding me like, hey, what's going on with you? Like, how are you doing? How are you showing up? You know, she has her own language for it. And she's right, like every time. There's usually something underneath the surface that I need to process or talk with her about. So we're in a season right now of figuring out where we want to head. Now that we've moved to the tropics, we did Maui for a year. We wanted to do it much longer, and it didn't necessarily pan out the way we wanted it to. But at the same time, I feel like we're on our path for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, and we know that we'll be back, you know, one day. So we have no complaints here with, you know, family.
It's pretty vacation-esque. How should we say? Pretty paradisic.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. It feels chasing kids naked around here, like, you know, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me fit, I would say. Literally, like sweating, running. I mean, I usually don't wear a shirt. Like, it's like get a little work done, chase a kid, you know, stop for a meal. Like, that's pretty much how we do it around here. So.
Yeah, which is awesome. Awesome. And then let's even expand, if you would, on the Hawaii section and the vision there, because that's where, like, you know, we've gone back and forth about like, oh, this and that in the future. And thank you for even sharing about, you know, how you are now, but would love to hear about that path, because that whole way of life is something I know a lot of people aspire to. And even to note, this just popped in my head is your note about how Brianna's right. I have a feeling it's going to get eaten up by literally every girlfriend or every wife that watches this. So that was just really funny. I feel like we should advise, like, like put like a warning, like that doesn't mean you're also wrong. But anyway,
that's right.
No, would love to hear about Maui and everything else.
Absolutely.
What's up?
I hear some voices.
Just as you mentioned too.
Yeah.
Kids
this is
coming through.
This is the natural setting.
I like
right
the
here.
boots, dude.
Yeah, this is Aspen. This is our 3-year-old.
Aspen, you want to say what's up to the camera? Yeah. Look that way and wave, or don't look that way.
You say hi to the people. It's in your boot.
It's in my boot.
Good. Uncle Will can have that one. There's tons of crickets around here. There it is. Dude, Maui was such a trip for us, man. It was. We had gone. The idea, and we told our friends and family and everyone this program that we had really like committed to and signed up for. We didn't have to move to Maui, but my wife and I looked at each other one day, and I had been just devouring anything Hawaii related since about 2020. Since about when the world was changing. And I couldn't really tell you why. It was just another one, like it was a fire season. You know, I mentioned earlier, like watching the boxing matches back, and that's like 2014. So here we are with kids. We had, I think, both at the time. And I love your boots, buddy. And we had him, Koa, our 4-year-old now. He came in 2021. So they're back to back. And so she gets this opportunity to learn about craniofacial therapy, and even more than that, like we call it like family ecology. This wise teacher, mentor, her name's Michelle Chatham, and so we decided to answer the call. We decided to move out there, and then really the open door was finding a place to live. You know, it's tough. It's a housing crisis right now out there, and my heart goes out to everything going on in Maui right now, and our friends and people out there we love dearly. But we ended up, first like major DM we sent to someone who's there, they said, oh, you're coming in May? That's crazy, because our neighbor's house opens up in May, and there's like 5 other families that want it, but you can try. Long story short, we get it. And we were on an island. Like, it was totally meant to be thing. So we're like, we're in. So it was one of those moments that I had kind of dreamed of, where we pretty much sell everything. We happened to be renting at the time. We'd already flipped our first home here in Columbus, bought and sold, and we're renting, and we were in real estate at the time. And so we go out there, and of course, like, it was like my SoCal boyhood vision dream 2.0, you know, and now I have kids. So Aspen was born right before we moved out there. And so for my wife, probably a different story came back to her, because she's breastfeeding 2 kids. First time she's ever moved in her entire life from Columbus. And her whole family and friends are here, and this like wonderful base of people and Midwest values. And we're out in Maui, where you have these big fish in a small pond. It's much slower, and so there was a lot to learn, and we grew so much. We did this intensive container of these other couples going through their growth and kind of witnessing what they were going through. So it was a really beautiful, hard, sacred, like divine time. And then we came home for the summer after that and had just got our real estate licenses out there. So we were going to kind of queue up this sort of like, think kind of like diamondy, sort of glitzy, large real estate brokerage out there. We were excited about it, but we're not kind of sure in some ways. And then the fires happened out there in August. And we were actually supposed to move to Lahaina. Well, we were maybe going to move to Lahaina, the town that burned down. Crazy. And I mean, I'm thankful we weren't there, obviously. It was hard being gone. So we decided to pivot. And we were like, you know what? I don't think we're supposed to go back out. But the experiences and what we learned out there were just so like pivotal and life-changing in terms of how we, again, the energetics of the family. It's a whole nother layer of the dynamic within the family and the spouses and how I father. And trust me, I'm learning every day. And I think in a lot of ways we miss it out there because the pace of life and the slowness and the like your Amazon doesn't get there for 2.5 weeks, like you kind of learn to love it in a way, and you come back and you get your comforts back in Ohio. We were talking about comforts earlier and how it can be a blessing and not a curse, but it'll also kind of slow you down in a way and keep you comfortable. So I think that travel and tropical animalism is a lot of our colleagues say is going to be a thing for us always, and we're talking through where is that going to be, whether it's Maui or somewhere. But we've gotten to bring back, which I think is my wife's overall viewpoint, is bringing back to your community what you've learned from wherever you go, wherever you feel called to go. There's such richness there if you're looking for it, and such beauty to learn. You're collecting stuff and beaches to play at. How do we collect things? That's a great question. We can talk about that. You put your crickets in buckets. So you're just getting a live look at how we roll here. But anyways, the Hawaii time was overall just like so, enriching, I think is the word. And I hope that we get to taste something like that again here soon. You about to jump for everybody?
Show the people to jump. Or not.
You know, jump?
Awesome.
Guys, let's give Uncle Will some space too, okay?
That wasn't funny.
I love you too, buddy.
No. But let's actually talk about that too, because that's something I really love sharing. I personally don't think, I'll bring on. I have no intention of bringing on anyone that I don't believe they can see their vision accomplished, right? And so let's talk about that. I love sharing those details.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what is your vision then from here? Because I feel, and I see it, you can see it on your socials and everything, like, I feel like you too, you're building all this momentum. You have a ton of this kinetic energy.
Yeah, man.
What does the future look like?
That's so good. Yeah, like before, leading up to this, it was like I wrote a letter to myself during the thickness of the deep and dark despair moments of like the Hashimoto's and the thyroiditis. And I said, I want to be a father. I want to marry the woman of my dreams. I want to have kids. I want to experience the ocean again, all these things. And like, I did it. Like I stepped into it and I looked at that letter every single day. And it was like my most prized possession. And so now married and have lived those things and like living in it. Not that I've like arrived by any sense of the imagination, but in the day-to-day of this, you're totally right in that there has to be more and you have to continue to keep your eyes set on that. And something we learned in Hawaii too is like you have Michelle says this, you have your magnetic north that you can kind of sort of gravitate towards, and then there's your true north. Literally her thing is called True North Couples. And so we've had to talk about that intentionally away from the kids or even around the kids of we're not going to compromise for getting comfortable and coming back to this. Not that there's anything wrong with the school systems and whatever, and that's another conversation. Maybe there is actually, but we don't want to get like stuck in that,
Yeah.
you know, because in the busyness, it's just so easy. Like, let's just chill for a season and put them in school. Like, that's not us. So the vision for us is to create generational wealth while spending our time wisely and giving as much as we can to these guys at every season, every step, because the seasons happen so fast.
Like, that's what literally, like, if I had to, like, just pause for a second and say something, like, that's one thing I love, is the fact that, like, we're here doing it. And it was interesting because we were talking about beforehand, like, worried about them, like, oh, like, doing all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we were, for a good, solid discourse back and forth, and they're just doing their things.
Right, exactly.
No interaction. And that's,
Yep.
like, one thing I think, you know, you don't see, at least in the States much. They do a little bit better job in Europe,
Yeah.
from my experience, where it's like, no, it's a part of life. And that's something you demonstrate really well, is this is not like, I have to, you know, have this separate from this. And
Right.
like, you know, I have something called Congruency, where
Yes.
everything is congruent with that mission and purpose, and they're congruent with you and your life.
That's
So,
so
yeah.
good, man. Thank you.
But-
that's real.
Anyways, yeah. Time in.
Back in. So for what we're trying to build, it's modeling what we want to lead like the next generation in too. And I talked about generational stuff earlier. It's just like putting myself in those boxes, it wasn't working, it wasn't fitting. And so I think we're doing the hard work right now of building while we have kids. And that's one thing I tell like my friends here locally, or even whether it's online. I mean, I've been in a couple like master classes and groups, and I've gotten to share with the guys that want to be dads and build that, and they see what I have, and I'm like, you know, trust me, whatever you're putting off or whatever you want to build, like, start now, start today. Because there's one thing that I could change. I have no regrets, but there's one thing I could change. I would have been building a little bit sooner, especially with the online presence and the personal brand, and being as authentic in myself as possible. Like, now I have such a why, which is my boys. It's so, I mean, it's like ingrained in me. I see it pretty much 24/7, and it keeps me going. It's like the dynamite going off inside of me all the time. It's like I want to model and not just tell them what to do, but I want them to know what I'm doing. Like, I want them to know why I'm filming something, or why Dad's on the phone, you know, or why Dad's holed up in another part of the house or at a coffee shop getting work done, because I'm creating wealth for us to be able to do things, right? And I want them to be able to see that. And also, like, landscaping, you know, out in the yard, or cutting the grass, or feeding, you know, like the horses at the barn. Like, this is why we're doing this. And I want to bring them into that. And then also hopefully create this sense of discipline and work ethic at a younger age, whatever that is for them. And we have this approach where, this is a beautiful story my wife always tells, where, like, this boy started fishing every single day, and his parents didn't tell him to go to school or whatever. And he ends up fishing the rest of his life, and his childhood, and one day ends up landing this crazy tech job. And everyone asked him, how did you get here? And he said, I fished. I did what I wanted to do my whole life, and I learned all these things through my craft. And for him, it was fishing, literally. And our firstborn, all he wants to do is fish right now. And so my big why as a father right now is, like, how can I go all in with him in that, you know, like, in my free time, and cultivate that? How can we, with our time, like, work smarter, not harder, like, with love and integrity, and that we're not workaholics, and that we're not just working, because it is a lot of work, you know, like, starting in this entrepreneurial space, especially as a father here recently, as I've really gone all in the last couple of years. It's a lot, but ultimately I know it's worth it, and I know that they're one day going to benefit from going all in, being authentic, having integrity, and then just modeling what vitality looks like, you know, day in, day out, through the little decisions, the habits, and having fun with it ultimately too. Not being a bunch of rules, but we've left restriction, and we've brought this abundance mentality into our family, and I'd have it no other way.
Beautiful. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that too.
Yeah.
And then really to wrap up, one thing I ask everybody, you've already covered one part of it, but is just, what do you think is unique about yourself that has allowed you to become the man you are today, and succeed in the ways that you have?
It's a great question. I think it's my eternal optimism. And, you know, our boy Jake is doing Irrational Optimist,
yeah.
which I have to give him a shout out. Like, that movement is so cool. You know, being a dad, being in my 30s, like sometimes I almost feel like older and kind of looking into what these like younger people are doing, and yet like I talked to Jake and I'm like, no, like I'm cultivating that today as a 34-year-old with my family. This optimism that I've always had, where like moving to Memphis, I left my dream environment in California and I cried every day for like months. Like my dad always tells me the story. And yet like optimism and having this go-gettedness and like truth and fire for life is what's kept like me going, and seeing that in other people and wanting to draw that out of them. Like that's my favorite thing that I do with my clients now, and working with ultimately cultivating their health and vitality and wellness, is knowing what's inside of them and seeing it, whether they see it or not, and just having the patience and being a mirror for them to see that themselves, you know? So whether it's like my family or whether it's someone else's family, and like working with them to pull that out of them, that's what gets me out of bed and keeps me going and makes like my job like easy. I feel like it's just easy getting on calls and Zooms and, you know, entering other people's worlds when they're going through just the pits of hell. Like I've been there with autoimmunity and stuff, and it's really beautiful when they start to get those glimmers of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just it really like it's a bonfire, but by the time they've seen it for themselves. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing, and
Yeah, man.
thank you for everything. This is awesome. I keep saying like one of my favorite conversations, but
Right.
we have some pretty great ones. So
Yes, you do.
yeah, man. Thanks for sharing. Where can everybody find you?
Best places is probably Instagram. It's just my name, Colin 2_ Skinner, and then also on Twitter, X.
And Colin is 1L.
1L. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. And same thing on X, you said?
Yeah,
On
that's
Twitter?
it. Yep. Colin __ Skinner. Find me there.
Awesome.
Hit me in the DMs. I love communicating. Like I'm there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely give them a follow. And thanks for watching, y'all. See ya.